Welcome to the HR Tech for Good podcast. I'm joined today by the one and only Craig Fisher. How are you today, sir?
Good, dualta. Thank you. I am having a wonderful day. I'm a little scratchy. We had 0-degree temperatures, that's Fahrenheit, all last week here in the North Texas area, and climbing out from under a blanket of snow and ice. And today it's going to be 70 degrees and beautiful.
You guys aren't built for a bit of cold there, are you? It's not designed for it.
Not as much as we should be, certainly. We had multiple power failures at all of our power generation facilities, not all, but many. And so that's, not a good place to start.
Before we crack into it, I have to say, very impressed by your setup. Believe you said you have got an article on how to do it. How'd you got the camera right? You got the lights right?
Yeah, lots of practice, right? So I'm one of my lines of income is, I'm a speaker, and I do this quite a bit. And I also do a lot of training classes and webinars online. And so, I feel like if I'm the presenter, half my job is being clear and looking good and sounding, in a way that people can accept what I'm saying. And so I spent good time and effort researching the way to do it. And yeah, and this is Studio B, by the way. I got kicked out of my main office. My wife says we're
Check out Craig Fisher's LinkedIn profile if you want to read more about that article.
Yeah, in my featured content, there's a video about how to set this all up, my whole setup.
So this is episode 2. Episode 1 was the one and only Bill Berman. Mm-hmm. You and he go a bit back, don't you?
We do. Years ago, I hosted what was the first ever Twitter chat for recruiters. It was called TalentNet Live. Back then, we shortened it to hashtag TNL. Now it's hashtag TalentNet. But it was a Twitter chat we did weekly, and we did it for a couple of hours on Wednesday nights, and everyone would chime in, and Bill Borman would be on at 1 or 2 o'clock a.m. his time, chatting away, and we were talking about big issues of the day. Is social media good for recruiting, et cetera? Yeah. And that turned into an in real life conference that we host here in Texas now twice a year for the last 12 years now. And our first ever keynote speaker was Bill Borman, and it was his first time to ever speak in the United States. And this was in 2009. So wow. We've done quite a few things together ever since.
A vintage year, 2009.
Yeah, indeed. Vintage.
Yeah, we all remember it.
Yeah. Well, and the whole idea of TalentNet was that it was going to be a low cost entry point for people to get the same great content that you would get at an ERE or an HR Tech or an Unleash, something like that, right? And at that time, there was bad economy. No one had finances to do those types of things. And so we said, we'll just host our own cheap one here. And but the content was rich, and it's been great. It's been the most successful thing. We're now the largest recruiting conference in the Southern United States. And our next one is March 12th coming up, and you can find that at talentnetlive.com.
Will you be streaming that online?
Yes, it will be a virtual conference on the Hop-In platform. Right now, with early bird tickets, it's only like $25 to register, and maybe you could jump on and be a part of it.
Look at this guy. He is selling before we even got into it. I love it. So Bill inspired and terrified me in equal measures. A guy who owns a staffing firm or two like myself. Yeah. His predictions for the future, they were a bit, well, I'm not going to say I'm an optimistic guy, so I don't like to agree with him all the time. But I do definitely pay attention to him. What was his predictions back when you first met him as to where the world was going?
So he predicted that, sourcing is going to go away as a function. We won't really need recruiters in the future. They'll be more like account managers. And he's right about a lot of this stuff, right? But it's fairly simple math. As technology gets better, the things that are required to be done by recruiters and sourcers get fewer. Now, what we're not accounting for is the fact that even though we're advancing in technology, the human factor is becoming more and more important for candidate experience. So, it's a give and take, and he's right and he's not right.
Yeah, that's kind of where I left it in my
Yeah.
head. Although, my buddy helps me out with this podcast, and we decide we break down the conversation afterwards.
Hmm.
And I suppose the bit where I couldn't get my head around, but he didn't think that the human influence will be important for that, and I, or maybe I'm misquoting him, but it sounded like the headhunter's day was numbered.
Well, so if you think about it, you can now go research in the US, you can research, which provider to buy your electrical power from.
Yeah.
And you can do that all online, and you can set it up all online. But very often, a lot of people still want to talk to a person to do that. Same thing with insurance and, flights and things like that. And so it's not going away. What he's saying is that it's going to be more of a call center function. And I'm not sure I agree with that. I think we're still going to need specialists who are good at communicating.
Yeah. Okay. Um, so you have a few lines of work. You've
Mhm.
also got the employer branding as well. How does it all tie together? How do you run your week?
Very carefully. Um, I block a lot of time when I have to get big projects done. So, for instance, one of my lines of business is I do trainings and webinars for teams of all sizes, sales teams, recruiting teams, HR and talent acquisition teams, and a lot of what I do is about building up their personal brand and doing what I call um, optimizing your LinkedIn profile for search.
Mm.
And so I've got a really cool methodology there, but I have to do a lot of research about each company to do it. So when I'm heads down doing an employer brand audit for a company, for instance, to kind of see what they look like from the outside world, I put my phone down. I don't answer texts or look at email, and I block hours of time each day to do actual work, because in what we do, you and I, you spend a lot of time online and you can easily spend all your time online or on Clubhouse, as we were talking about. And
Yeah.
that gets to be addictive, right? And so I have lots of blackout periods during the day, and I have to catch up in the evening to kind of look at emails and things like that.
Let's jump into Clubhouse. I
Hmm.
got real excited about it. I made some
Yeah.
big bold predictions about it.
Hmm.
And I'm already a little bit bored. You were in a couple of rooms, and I was like, this guy knows what he's talking about. I reached out, and I thought, get him on the podcast. Interesting
Yeah.
connection, and here we are. Mostly, though, I feel as somebody who's been podcasting for a long time,
Yeah.
if I'm not in control of the room, I'm I'm not interested.
Yes. Yeah. So it's okay to be on somebody else's show, right? If you're a good interviewer, you also are good at being interviewed. And so, like you, I've been doing podcasts since, the TalentNet Twitter chat turned into a podcast, right? So, way back then. So, over the years, I felt kind of the same way. It's okay to be on a panel. It's easier. It's okay to be a guest. It's great to be the moderator. But in those clubhouse rooms, it gets to be where everybody's just waiting in line for their turn to share their story, which is fine. But once you've been through that a few times, the small rooms are better, I think, because there's less of that.
Yeah, and well, I don't know. Like, I just think, like, if you have a community behind you, like we've our own community. We've got quite a few on the go,
Yeah.
um, servicing the staffing industry right now,
Right.
and if it gives me the opportunity to record my podcast in real time with
Yes.
an audience,
Hmm.
then it's cool, and I'm in. I'm all in. I'm all in, and I'm excited.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, and I'm not able to repurpose that content, it,
It's
it,
yeah, it's
it
bad time management, right?
yeah, it's not, I'm too busy for that, right?
That's right.
So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I presume they're going to go down the content creation piece, and we'll end up there.
They're going to have to, because otherwise, non-reusable content is, for content marketers anyway, is not good. And everybody is a content marketer now. You have to be, because selling directly doesn't really work. Inbound marketing does work, and that's where the content part comes in. But you have to give a lot. You can't just ask all the time, right? Big
So
believer in that.
the HR tech community,
Mm-hmm.
really interesting. A small enough amount of real influencers from the research I've done is like, why is it so small?
That's a good question. The the echo chamber, I think, is small, but I think there are a lot of influencers beyond that, core echo chamber group. There are a bunch of people who have been around a long time with a lot of the tech as it evolved.
Yeah.
I've been an advisor to HR tech companies now for 15 years,
Yeah.
and I've helped a lot of them get acquired, right, and or evolve their product. I was around with Symphony Talent's products before there was ever a Symphony Talent, as a beta user. This is a long time ago, right? And so there are those of us who have really been there and done that. And I spent the 2000s, with my staffing firm and as the director of a staffing firm before that, filling recs for the Accentures and KPMGs of the world to build HR tech systems,
Wow.
from SAP, Oracle, et cetera, in big organizations. So I learned from the bottom,
Yeah.
how to do all this stuff. And so I think there are influencers, and I think there are people who talk about it. And then I think there's another category of people who are immersed in it, really do it, and know what they're talking about. And they're influencers by default, but they probably wouldn't call themselves that.
One of the big problems of today that HR tech is trying to solve out there.
Yeah. So right now it's too easy to apply. We've gone full tilt the wrong way. So you've got one-click applies and things like that, and we have serial appliers. So recruiters are overwhelmed with applicants, which is a great problem to have if you have some technology to sort those applicants, right? So if you can match and sort and stack rank those applicants, then great. But then you've got a whole bunch of applicants that have a void in communication. So two things, right? How to sort the plethora of applicants that we have, because recruiting is not broken. We can get applicants. That's not a problem. And then also, but how do you communicate with those that don't make that top 25 list? So a little bit of, machine learning tech can go a long way there.
And how can we do all this in a non-biased way? Because it seems like this is one of the big questions that keeps coming up.
Yeah. So sourcing and recruiting bias is tricky. There are companies now that will blind a resume for pronouns and even the names of colleges, and just put top 50 college in XYZ region instead before it gets to the hiring manager, so that there's no chance of that bias. It's not perfect, but it's better than nothing. And then there are a whole bunch of companies that will help you write your job descriptions and your career pages better, to attract a wider array of people, because there are certain descriptive words that you can use that will repel female applicants, for instance. And so there are some better ways to do that, right? A bunch of Textio and various alternatives.
The bit that confuses me on how they're going to go with this is, how do they, like, the agency world is based on percentage of close.
Correct.
So it's very hard to do that in an unbiased way when you only have a certain amount of shot, you're against the other people.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be done quick, and the margin for error is so small.
Yeah. So I'm going to be honest. I don't think it's very possible, right, for the agency world. I don't think that's a solution. And we're going to try, right? Technology is going to try to get there, and there may be mandates at some point that makes it a real thing, but it's going to be a real trick, because you still have to talk to people to know if they're a good fit, that sort of thing. And you're going to know who, what type of person they are when you talk to them. Personality traits, all these personality, surveys are coming into the mix now to try to make the right team fit for the organization that you're recruiting for. And so, you can't tell me that you can have a completely unbiased process and then do personality matching for team fit and have that not be biased. So
Yeah,
I don't, I think at the agency level, it's going to be agency's job to make sure that the bias is filtered out before it gets to a hiring manager.
it's going to be tough, hey?
Yeah, it
Uh,
is.
so employer branding.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a HR tech company.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the big issues of today. Like, how do I go around creating that employer brand that is authentic?
Mm-hmm. What you need right now is a handful of things. And this is why it's important to look at your employer brand every couple of years to make sure that you're basing your messaging off of that properly. Because now you have to be concerned about people feeling that your company is safe, has wellness and fairness in mind, right? And is very inclusive. And all of these things were, starting to be important a couple of years ago, but we were still using big buzzwords about personal growth and education and things which still appeal to job seekers in our messaging. But your core employer brand, which is really an internal thing, not an external thing, but you base your external messaging off of it, really needs to reflect the fact that you're an inclusive workplace and the company really cares about employees' safety, health, and wellness. And I'd start there.
So very much. So whenever people come to you with this problem, you're
Yeah.
like, well, let's actually go back to the roots and see where you're
Yep.
at with this. How does that work when you're dealing with the like senior managers and board as an exercise to get them to
Mhm.
the point where inwardly they reflect what they want to reflect outwardly?
Yeah, so you have to interview a lot of employees at the organization and a vast array of diverse types of people at various levels of their careers there.
Yeah.
So new hires all the way up to executives, and you're going to have brand advocates and people who maybe aren't so enthused with the brand right now. And that's great. You want that because what you really want at the end of the day is to have an organic group of messages and keywords bubble up from all of those interviews, right? You record them and then keywords bubble up. And you can kind of get the transparent and organic messaging from that. I mean, you get the vibe of what everybody's excited about at the organization there. So you focus it around that. Maybe it's great perks, maybe it's, culture, maybe it's that everyone's all in and everyone cares a lot, that sort of thing. And then from that, you have to look at what your competitors are doing and differentiate yourselves from them. And so, it all comes together in the end to say, we are XYZ because we do XYZ. And, you can't do this in a vacuum. So I bring in, other writers to bring in other perspectives when I do these projects. And, usually when you collaborate well with the customer, it ends up being a pretty good outcome.
How does the whole world, the ecosystem work in HR tech? You do you usually like some like ex recruiter meets a developer, or they have a bit of a chat about something they'll fix, and maybe they
Yeah.
go to somebody like you, and then they end up at VC, or like walk me through what a journey could look like.
Yeah. So I'm currently the maybe interim CEO of a company called knack.io, and it's a personalized job board for engineers to find remote work. And the genesis of that was a guy who worked at Allegis, a company I was a leader at for several years, um, had recruited a software engineer. They got to be friends and got to talking about the experience for engineers to apply for jobs is generally terrible. And the way they communicate with recruiters is not good because they hate LinkedIn and they hate getting barraged with all these
Yeah.
jobs that aren't a fit. And so, yeah, they got together to come at it from the engineer's point of view. And that happens a lot. But the problem is a lot of times it's just engineers and people who haven't done recruiting trying to build the product, or it's the other way around. It's recruiters trying to build a product without proper engineering and they outsource that or offshore that. And it's, it doesn't come out to be a perfect product. So what you have to do is get good advice along the way from people who have things seen things be successful, who understand where the VC money comes from and what they look for,
Hmm.
right?
What
And
what what
who can guide
what
you through that.
what do they look for?
Well, okay, think about it like this. If you can say, this is like the Slack for recruiting, or
Okay.
this is like, Google for candidate experience, or this is like
You need to
Amazon.
be
So
able to explain it real easy.
in a consumer type model. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. What else?
Yeah. So I think the companies that do well do get that funding, and they are able to weather a couple of years of being a little bit stagnant, because it takes a couple of years for something to catch on.
Hmm.
You have to have good tenure with your beta companies to get data to build case studies, and that's what gets you paying customers. And so you've got to be prepared for that, because it's not instant fame and success when you just drop what you think is the next greatest HR tech software. Because I can tell you that
Yeah.
if you think it's the greatest HR tech software, I can tell you I've seen it before.
Yeah. I bet you have. So what makes that company successful then? So if there's so much out there,
Hmm.
so you have a few pound, maybe you're solving a problem. A few
Yeah,
other people might have solved the problem as well.
right.
What's the journey to success look like?
Well, so it doesn't matter if other people are doing it, right? It's how you differentiate yourself with customer service, your sales process, not being pushy, right? Being a part of the community, and getting to be known as helpful people,
Yeah.
right? And giving back. I mean, get involved with the events that people are watching as part of their sort of requirement now as work from home. They've got to do this extra learning,
Yeah.
right? And so be present, be there to network, and don't be selling all the time, right? My ratio is 5 gives for every 1 ask.
Yeah.
And if you are constantly giving, and every once in a while, hey, do you know anyone who might need this
Yeah.
or would be interested in that? Then you're going to be a good part of your network, and that's what's important.
And when you're looking to sell
Yeah.
this product or any other product that you've come across,
Hmm.
um, like, is it sold in the same way that other SaaS products are, or is there more of a channel sales approach within the HR tech world, or
Hmm.
what have you seen typically work?
Yeah, both things happen, right? So you find your influencers, and
Like you, Craig?
yeah, well, or you, Dualta. You try to get them on board with your product, and not just by incentivizing, but introduce those influencers to the engineers that build your product. Get them under the hood and behind the scenes to what your organization's all about. Like, introduce those people to your whole company, and that's how you get mega fans of a brand or a product. And if you can do that, if you can get everybody on board to kind of get out there and be part of the plan and part of the pitch, then your influencers will introduce you to companies, because they're regularly I talk to 2 or 3 talent acquisition leaders every day, right, that are having different issues, that call me up and say, hey, how do I do this or that,
Mm.
right? And so there are people out there that have those conversations, that know where things need to go.
Yeah.
Jerry Crispin's a great example, right? I mean, he's amazingly well plugged in. And if you can get him on board with your product, who can say every once in a while, yeah, you might want to talk to this person. That's
Sorry, what does Jerry do?
Jerry runs an organization called Career Crossroads, which is a colloquium for employers to join, to have these kind of group conversations when it's in person at one of their offices around the country. They do 5 of them a year, something like that. And you pay a fee to have 1 or 2 members of your organization go and have these private conversations with a big group. And you do breakout sessions within that sort of thing. But then there's survey data that is shared amongst all the organizations. And, it's a good benefit for the companies that participate, because you really get to go hash out in a private forum what your issues are and see how other people are solving them.
Okay, cool. So what we're kind of establishing here is there's a bit of a roadmap from establishing who the influencers are, what your
Mhm.
go-to-market strategy is. Um, I'm presuming you probably want to get some senior TA people as advocates of your brand as well. From
Yeah.
from that, does a lot of that happen as well?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the people who are considered influencers have also been senior TA people, right? They've sat in the seat, they know what they're doing, and whether they're currently doing that or not, they know, what the issues are. They've installed the software, they've done all the things. And so yeah, definitely you want people who have been practitioners or are currently practitioners, or even, former practitioners who are now board members of other HR tech companies, right? There's a lot of that happens as well. But it's the people who have not just an audience, but the trust of an audience,
Sure.
who you want to be able to make referrals for you. The other thing is you need really good salespeople. All right. Don't skimp on that. There are companies out there now that want to do just the sort of influencer or advocate model or
Yeah.
just the referral model
You,
because they haven't seen success hiring an SVP of sales. And I say, maybe don't hire an SVP of sales, hire 4 good salespeople or 3 good salespeople who can really make the phone calls, and don't just automate your marketing. Hammer those phones and build those relationships.
the so uh, in our business, we do provide salespeople to the HR
Hmm.
tech industry. There, there seems to be a lack of talent
Yeah.
compared to other niche areas.
Yeah.
Like if I look at like cyber sales or Martech
Hmm.
or one of the other SaaS areas, it's thin enough. Is that due to like it being an early, like a growing market or?
It's an established market.
Yeah.
So, but there's so many new players all the time, right?
Okay.
And half of them won't be here this time next year.
Wow.
Or they will have been gobbled up by somebody else who already has salespeople. So, but what I see is there's a lot of the same people that go around from company to company, and you see this, shift from, ISEMs to smart recruiters, or the other way around, whatever, from career builder to something else, and that's just kind of common. And then the acquisitions happen, and these people merge and cross over, and you're right, it's a small group.
Yeah.
What you need to do is find people who have been successful in other types of technical sales. It doesn't really matter if they know the recruiting space, because you want to constantly be introducing new, fresh, interesting faces into the recruiting ecosphere
Mm.
and giving them a voice and helping them learn, and tell them, don't try to be an expert in this, just reflect on your journey and write about that and post about that and share what it's like learning HR technology.
Can you talk about some of the products out there that excite you? Maybe ones that you're involved in, but also ones that maybe you're not and you've seen. Um,
Yeah.
because it feels like we're in COVID now,
Right.
because like there's so much innovation and people are like really a bit more, I don't know what to say, but they're a bit more game ball for change at the moment. So
Mhm.
there's been so much put on the market. What's exciting you out there?
So a few things, you know, I think there are starting to be some tools that will eventually replace your standard big applicant tracking system. Kind of smaller, lightweight solutions like Loxo, I think could be an ATS. I really think it could be a good replacement. Now we got to talk about um, rules and regulations and things like that at some point that'll have to be addressed. But um, that's a real good example. And then Visage, who I mentioned earlier, Visage.jobs is crowdsourcing for sourcing. And so I think, to Bill's point, as sourcing teams kind of shrink, you're going to need kind of an outside network. And what Visage has been able to do is provide extra income for thousands of sourcers to bid on jobs that recruiters and employers put into their system. And then there's some smart technology in the middle that matches those jobs to recruiters or sourcers who have repeatedly done well with that kind of search.
Wow.
And so you get fed the jobs that you're good at, which is really cool. And then, you submit resumes, and if the employer selects those resumes for interview, you get paid. So it's a really cool model. And I think that crowdsourcing model is going to start taking shape in other ways, right? I think there's going to be a lot more collaboration. And I feel like hopefully large enterprise software contracts are going to start to slow down. Now, that said, Accenture tells me that they're seeing Taleo still, grow in market share every day, and that just makes me cringe.
Yeah. Okay, it's interesting technology. I haven't come across it. Final question, Craig.
Mhm.
Can you name a couple of people who inspire you in the HR tech world and why?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's quite a few, but Jerome Tiernick is clearly one of my favorite people on the planet. He's done a lot of podcasts and conferences with me, and they asked me to speak at the Smart Recruiters Conference. But he's the founder of Smart Recruiters, and before that, he founded a company called Mr. Ted, which he successfully sold and became other software. But Smart Recruiters, I had an opportunity in 2011, I think, to be a judge at an HR tech startup competition. And I voted Smart Recruiters over Workday at that time. And it was because of Jerome's pitch. And his whole pitch was, we're going to give this software away. This is going to be free software. There'll be a marketplace within it where you can buy add-ons. But the whole thing about it is it's simple. One button, simple. And the pitch was just elegant. And the software has become fairly elegant. And so Jerome is sort of I think the ideal in how to build a good company.
Sounds like a visionary.
He is, and quite a cool guy. He's French.
Yeah. Anybody else?
So Jocelyn Francois, another French guy who has started Visage, is a really smart, passionate guy who really wants to improve recruiting. And anybody that really cares about improving recruitment, to me, and thinks about it and is passionate about it, and it's not just about dollars and cents, but it's about actually making the process better. They're going to be some of my favorite people.
All right. Before you go, remind us about your upcoming speaking event.
Yeah, so talentnetlive.com. TalentNet Live is going to be March 12th, and Lars Schmidt, who is one of my former and sometimes current podcast partners, who just created this book, Redefining HR, is one of our keynote speakers. We're going to have a session all about pronouns. I don't think any of us have that game down yet, how we're supposed to address people these days. And so we're going to have,
especially white dudes our age.
White dudes our age. That's right. And believe it or not, I am a Native American. And it's not something I go around talking about very much. Yeah. But I'm a little precious about it, I think. And maybe I shouldn't be. And we're going to explore that. We're going to have Torrin Ellis and Celinda Appleby on a panel to discuss this. It's going to be fun. And we're going to have an edition of the Recruiting Animal Show live in video, in a panel room.
Shout out to the Recruiting
hilarious.
Animal Show. And
that's right.
One of the things I really like what he's done recently is that he's added video to it. And
that started at TalentNet.
I tell you what, it's really needed video, because when he's screaming down the microphone, it's kind of hard to relate, but when there's video and it's on Zoom and there's less sound issues, it's actually really improved it. And he's given other podcasters access to post all the stuff, all their stuff in his group. So yeah, big shout out to them. Good stuff.
Yeah, it's great. So yeah, they did that first. It was my idea to come on and do a video version of the Recruiting Animal Show at the last TalentNet conference that was in December, virtual. And I've been friends with him for a long, long time. I was an early guest on his show several times. And Jerry Albright from that show was on the original TalentNet Twitter chat every week, playing tunes from Pandora and giving everybody the link so we could all play along. And I got to speak at a conference in Toronto one time that Michael Kellerman, who's a recruiting animal, actually showed up to. And he gave me a personal walking tour and history of downtown Toronto. And it was great. He's a lovely guy.
Okay, great stuff. Thanks so much, Craig. It was really good to get to know you.
Hey, dualta, thanks for having me. This is fun.